My wife had been working on her special project for 4 months now. It was not her personal project, but she was the lead person and responsible for its success. The project was designed to save her company. Bixler Enterprises, the last 4 months had been difficult due to the fact that she was forced to work hard. It was important for both her and the company. There was a good chance that Bixler Enterprises would go under if the project didn't get done. Sarah had a bachelor's degree from Albright and an MBA from Wharton. She was the smartest one in the family. I started working as an auto mechanic right out of high school, and after 21 years I was still an auto mechanic. I didn't mind because I liked the work and it paid well. It was enough to pay for Sarah's college and raise 2 kids. We weren't living luxuriously, but we were doing well. The kids had already shipped out and things were going pretty well with our income. Sarah got pregnant 3 months after we were married at the age of 18. For the first few years we were married, we lived with my parents. They had a big, empty house as 4 of my siblings had moved away. That meant we had a babysitter while Sarah got her first few years of college because of 2 pregnancies. The 4-year degree took 6 years to complete. It was hard, but she made it through. I always had a job and never lacked for overtime if I needed it. After Sarah graduated from Wharton, we rented our own place. She had job offers from several large firms, but they all required us to move. I didn't mind, but Sarah wanted to stay close to home. That's why she decided to work at Bixler Enterprises. It paid well, but most importantly, it gave her responsibility and the opportunity to advance. Sarah was a hard-working, dedicated employee. The presentation is Thursday at the Horizon Hotel in Philadelphia. I took a few days off work to assist her as needed. In the end, all I accomplished was making her something to eat when she got home. I didn't know anything about her job. Nor did I want to know. High-level corporate business bored me. Businessmen from Europe, Asia, and South America came here. The company paid for their airfare and provided rooms at the Horizon Hotel. While they were here, it was expensive as hell. And from some of the things Sarah had said, the company was overestimating its finances. Her presentation was important to her, to the company, and to over 200 employees. Until Tuesday evening, everything was going well. Sarah came home in a new outfit. A gray suit with a white blouse. She laid out everything she needed on the bed in the guest room when it came to housekeeping. She was normal, but when it came to work, she was meticulous. I didn't understand why she needed to pull out her fancy underwear, but I didn't say anything. In addition to her suit for the presentation, she had several cute little cocktail dresses for social events before and after the event. I had always avoided such events, but felt obligated to go with her if she wanted me to. She thanked me for the offer, but said it wasn't necessary. All the materials and equipment she needed were neatly stowed in the trunk of her Volvo. Before she left work, she drove the car herself to make sure everything was in perfect condition. She had all day Wednesday to get ready and all evening Wednesday to socialize with her guests. Sarah was so good at what she did that I felt it would have been better if I had just stayed away from her. Finally, she was done. She had checked and double-checked everything. All she needed now was a hot shower and a good night's sleep. I guess my mistake was that I started checking her stuff after Sarah started showering. I thought I was helping, but it turned out to be the opposite. I was shifting things on the bed when a small white envelope fell out of the side pocket of her makeup bag. An envelope from a drugstore, but not the kind we usually use. Inside were 10 pills. I had no idea what PR was, and the instructions were confusing. If necessary, take 1 pill and then a second pill 12 hours later. I thought it might be something she got from anxiety or nerves, but the instructions didn't make sense. The prescription was written in her name. On Monday, I put the envelope back in as she was finishing her shower. I decided I wanted to find out more about Prevent. Before I told her about it, of course, if I mentioned it, it would mean I was going through her things I hate dilemmas while Sarah got ready for bed. I went to our home computer and typed in Prevent. 10 minutes later, I joined my wife under the covers. I lay awake all night, wondering why my wife had picked up a prescription for the morning after pill. Especially after I'd had a vasectomy 10 years earlier. The next morning, I got up early, but I wasn't rested. I took a long walk, hoping it would clear my head. I reluctantly headed toward home, afraid of what I might do or say when I got there. My son Josh joined the Navy after high school and was in his freshman year in San Diego. Our daughter Gloria married her childhood sweetheart last year and just moved to Dallas. That left just Sarah and me. I missed the kids, but looked forward to growing old with my wife. She was the only woman I'd ever been interested in. And now it was all turning to ___. If Sarah was having an affair, she hid it well, of course. I never checked up on her. I never looked at her emails or cell phone calls. I had no reason to. I had no way of knowing what she was doing at work or after work. I trusted her completely, John. Where the hell have you been? You want some eggs or something? No, just coffee. I wasn't feeling very talkative. What's wrong, honey? It's only for 3 days. You can come if you want, but you'll be bored to death, no. I really don't want to go, but I hate leaving you alone. I worry when you're not here. That's very sweet, darling, but it'll be all right. I'm not going to leave the hotel all this time. I'll spend most of today making sure the conference room is ready, and tonight I'll have a nice chat with our potential clients tomorrow. I probably won't even get a chance to pee. I'll be home as early as possible on Friday. I promise you a great weekend, if you know what I mean. That all sounds good. But you can't blame me for worrying. I'm an auto mechanic, and I have a beautiful and successful wife. Sometimes I get the feeling that you're less interested in advancing your family situation than you are in advancing your career. Stop it, damn it, John. I've always respected what you do for a living and never pointed out. Otherwise, you raised 2 great kids and put me through college. You are a great husband, a great father, and a good provider, and never forget that I finished my coffee while she cleared the table. Do you want me to call you? No, that's not a good idea. I'll have my cell phone off, and I'm going to turn off my room phone for the night so I can get some sleep. I'll call you every chance I get. I helped her load the car. She was as fussy about it as she was about everything else. Work rated. It would take her 3 hours to get to the Risen Hotel. I stood on the porch and watched her leave. I didn't bother asking her about the pill bills. I spent the rest of the morning on the porch. I don't remember ever worrying as much as I did now. I felt small and insignificant. I felt out of my league. I was a small-town guy with a mediocre job and a successful wife. It was a mismatch. I should have noticed it earlier. I felt stupid. The best suit I had was a blue blazer and a pair of pants. At least I had a few ties, even if they were 10 years out of date. I had just finished getting dressed when the landline phone rang. Hey, sweetie, I just wanted to let you know I got here. Okay, you had a good drive. I'm assuming the traffic wasn't too heavy. It was fine. I'll call you tonight now. I gotta go. I'm in room 714. Sarah, I can be at my parents' or my brother's tonight if you want to call me on my cell phone. Okay, cell phone rings. I love. You gotta go. I took my time getting to Philly. I didn't go straight to the Risen. I stopped first and got a steak and cheese. It promised to be a long night. I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. I parked in the hotel garage and just waited. Sooner or later, I had to enter the hotel. I just couldn't decide when to do it. The ringing of my cell phone helped me make my decision. John, I just wanted to let you know that everything has settled. I'm going downstairs now to meet some people and have dinner. You didn't forget anything, did you? No, everything's fine. I've got everything in my room for tomorrow. Do you need anything? No? John, relax. I'm going to turn my phone off. I'll call you tomorrow morning, all right? Chuckles, have fun. It's not fun. John, it's work. I didn't look too out of place. The lobby restaurant and conference rooms were full of people, so I could remain inconspicuous. There was a cute little brochure that showed the layout of all the hotel rooms. I wandered through the different rooms and stopped at the walls, looking around at the crowd. I had no idea what I would do if Sarah saw me. I would find out if and when that happened. I found an event board that listed all the rooms that were being used by the various groups. Bixler Enterprises didn't have any rooms available for Wednesday night. I found this interesting. Sarah had said she wasn't going to leave the hotel, but now I wasn't so sure about that. There were 3 dining rooms, family casual and fine dining. Sarah wasn't a big fan of dining with kids, so went to the casual room first. It only took 5 minutes to make sure she wasn't there. I had better luck in the gourmet lounge. It was a cozy little booth nestled in the corner, the kind of table people reserve to have a private rendezvous. Sarah was wearing a black cocktail dress with a deep neckline and pearls. She looked elegant, and her companion looked like he appreciated it. I knew a few of the people Sarah worked with, and he wasn't one of them. He was familiar to me, but there was no way I could remember him. There were plenty of free seats, so I had no trouble crossing the room. There were candles and small glass candlesticks on the tables. I blew mine out and told the waiter it was bothering my glaucoma. I ordered the usual chicken dish and made myself comfortable. The waiter poured my coffee for the 3rd time. Excuse me, the guy at the table across the table looks awfully familiar. Do you know who he is? Sure, that's Malcolm Eugene Foote. He's a member of the town meeting. He's expected to run for con in the next few years. Is that his wife with him? She's very pretty. No, this is the first time I've seen her. He always uses that table for special ladies, if you know what I mean. I just smiled at him and asked for the check. I had never seen Sarah so sensual with a man before. She seemed to catch every word he said like he was God or something. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, but it wasn't platonic or businesslike when I left. They were finishing their second bottle of wine. Now I understood why she had taken her fancy lingerie. I made myself comfortable in the corner of the lobby so I couldn't be seen. 10 minutes later, they walked out of the restaurant. She held his hand as they walked across the lobby to the elevator. I watched the floor indicators carefully. That the elevator stopped on the 3rd floor was a good sign. It meant she hadn't taken him to her room. It was a bad sign when the elevator didn't go to the 7th floor. It meant she went to his room just in case I was wrong about something. I sat in the lobby and watched the elevator for an hour. People came and went. But Sarah was not one of them. I got my empty suitcase out of the car and walked up to the front desk, even though I could prove I was her husband. I had a hard time getting a key card. They relented after calling the room, but no one answered. Finally, I was on my way to room 714 with the key card. I didn't even turn on the lights. At first, I just sat in the dark room for over an hour. It wasn't hard to make sure she wouldn't come back to the room first. I packed all her clothes and personal belongings. I didn't leave anything behind. I checked the package of Previn. There were still 10 pills left in it on the dresser, very neatly laid out, were all the items she would need for her presentation. The next day, I began to fill the suitcase. There were 24 specially bound promotional folders and another 20 regular folders. All of them went into the suitcase. A digital projector went in next, followed by a laptop. I took her purse and cell phone, which she'd left in the room. All she had with her was a clutch and probably a tube of lipstick. I walked around the room as carefully as she did to make sure I didn't miss anything. Once I was satisfied, I put her car keys and my wedding ring on the dresser. Other than those 2 items, the room was completely empty. The elevator headed straight for the parking garage. I had no trouble carrying 2 suitcases, and 20 minutes later I was on the expressway heading north. It was well over 3. In the morning, I had no idea it had been that long. An hour or 2 later, my cell phone rang. Caller ID showed it was the Reason's phone number. John? Yes, where are you? I'll be at the house soon. That's all I said. It was quiet on the other end of the line. Salesmen have an old saying, the first one to talk loses. It seemed like an eternity before she spoke. John, I'm sorry she didn't ask anything and just hung up. I turned my phone off. It was obvious she had gone back to her room later that day. She was to give a presentation that would save her company and bring her a promotion. I put the suitcases in the attic of the garage. Sarah never went there and never thought to look for anything there, of course. At this point, I'm pretty sure it didn't matter first. I gathered all my clothes and personal belongings. Most men have their own tools. It's usually a requirement for the job. I stopped by the store, loaded mine. Into the Subaru and picked up my last paycheck. By then, the banks were already open. I didn't have to do any fancy money and asset manipulation. I just withdrew all the money from my accounts. I had lunch in Hagerstown, Maryland. I had enough money to live on for a few years, but I knew I would be looking for a job very soon. Sarah and I were alike in that we both loved to work. I'm going to miss her. I killed a couple hours in the Luray Caves and rented a room near Whiteville. I had no idea what I was going to do. It was Saturday day, and I found myself sitting at the Chattanooga Aquarium watching nature I had never seen before. I spent a few hours just relaxing and decided it was a good place to be. I bought a year pass to the aquarium, and by dinner time I had a place to stay. It was a mobile trailer in the park, but it was furnished and cheap. I didn't need much first thing. Monday morning I was going to get a job. A good handyman can always get a job, especially if he's willing to work hard. I could remain inconspicuous until it was time to renew my driver's license or car tags. I'll worry about them when the time comes. Sunday afternoon, I called Gloria. I felt obligated to let her know what was going on, but Sarah had already told her she was pretty frank with Gloria about what happened. She said she cheated. I caught her, I left, and she lost her job. I felt bad that she lost her job, but that was the price she had to pay. I asked Gloria to tell Josh what was going on the next time she talked to him. I also told her that I would call about once a month to check on how things were going. I didn't tell her where I was by noon the next day I had a job. It was actually a short walk from the trailer park with the Waffle House about halfway there. What more could a man want? I don't know how they handled the paperwork, but I was getting $20 an hour with no questions asked. I was happy, and they were happy I wouldn't even have to get into my money that I brought with me. About 2 months later, Gloria informed me that Sarah had moved out of the house and was living with her parents. Gloria didn't know anything else, but was happy that I was settled and doing well. Josh called me from San Diego just to let me know he was going on a cruise. He was an avionics technician on an aircraft carrier. He tried to explain what he actually did, but it was over my head. I never really knew much about technical stuff. Both of them were careful not to say anything bad about their mother. I appreciated that after that it was business as usual. I started talking to Gloria at least weekly. Josh and I started emailing regularly. Gloria talked to Sarah regularly, but she said very little about what she was doing or where she was. I never filed for divorce, and it seems Sarah never did either. I have a Tennessee driver's license, and the tags on the Subaru. I started going to one of the local bars a couple times a month, and even got laid. 2 girls took turns becoming regular nighttime companions. They weren't looking for commitment, and neither was I. It seemed to work out well for all of us. Life was good. That was a long time ago, and I gradually forgot about Sarah. Eventually, Subaru started giving me trouble. I'd forgotten how long it had been. It was over 200,000 miles. I was pondering this over a mug of beer one day when I realized that it had been almost 5 years since I'd left home. I had kept in close touch with both children. Gloria had 2 children of her own by this time and wanted me to come visit them. Josh almost married a Thai woman, but at the last moment he refused. I usually worked 6 days a week and used Sunday to recover from Saturday night. There was no good reason for someone knocking on my trailer door at 6 o'clock on a Friday morning. Their rudeness was rewarded by a half-naked man opening the door. Day jockey shorts are disgusting, and the lady at the door, judging by the look on her face, agreed with me. She looked away, but her companion didn't seem to be impressed. Normally, I would have worn pants, but at a time like this, guests annoyed me. We're looking for John Terrell. I don't know you. My name is David Simmons, and this is my wife, Marcia. We have a problem, and we're hoping you can help us. I'm so sorry I don't work by moonlight. If you need something done on your car, you'll have to go to the store. This elicited several blank stares and finally a response. It has nothing to do with your job. It's more of a personal problem. Can we come in the trailer inside? Looked like crap. I rarely had guests, so I rarely cleaned it. Even my girlfriends insisted we go to their place, be my guest. Let me put on my pants real quick. As I entered the bedroom, I left the door open just to show them what a welcoming host I am. I also put on a shirt. Would you like some coffee? It'll only take about 10 minutes. I moved some things off the couch so they could sit down. There was no answer to the coffee question. We have an adopted daughter of 4 and 1 2 years old who needs a bone marrow transplant, and we are hoping you can help us. We are willing to pay you if needed by my bone marrow. No, we want to use it, and we're willing to compensate you for any inconvenience. I think you want to buy it. I was acting like a wise ass, and I suddenly realized that these people were serious. They had a real problem, and they were looking for help. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue. Our best chance of finding a donor is next of kin. You're our best hope. Watch. This, I don't mean to be a smartass, but I think you got the wrong guy. When was your daughter born? She'll be 5 years old in July. Maria Simmons spoke for the first time, and she sounded sincere. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I had a vasectomy 15 years ago. There's no way I could be her father. Why was your name on the birth certificate? I can't answer that. Maybe you should ask her mother. That statement was met with silence. I felt sorry for these people, but I didn't know how to help them. What's the mother's name? Sarah Liz Terrell. I couldn't find the words. Maybe I shouldn't have taken those damn pills from her, of course. Then those people wouldn't have a daughter at all. I thought I was done with grief, and here it is again, old memories of my wife having sex with that damn Philadelphia politician. I was starting to forget it all, and now it was back. God damn it. I now understand and apologize for my rudeness and insensitivity. I will do everything in my power to help you. First of all, why can't Sarah get a bone marrow transplant medically? She can't. Why not check a mother? She has to be a worthy donor. Oh, she's a suitable donor, but she's too sick. The doctors refuse to even consider using her sick with what she's dying of liver failure. She's got less than 6 months to live. This doesn't make any sense. She's always been in perfect health besides. I don't believe a diseased liver will prevent her from donating bone marrow. The hospital won't accept her signature on the consent form. Are you saying there's something wrong with her head? They both looked at me in silence. They knew the answer, but they didn't want to say it. At that moment, I didn't want them to feel even more awkward 10 minutes ago. I didn't care about them, but now I felt like I had to protect them and help them. How did this happen? Could any of my kids help? Maybe, but we thought you were our best hope. Why don't you go after your father? Your real father, we thought it was you. We have no idea who else it could be. Sarah didn't tell us anything about another possible father. In fact, she was in no condition to explain anything, Mara added. We got most of our information from the adoption agency. I had to get coffee and take a leak. Excuse me for a moment. I left my guest sitting there while I brewed the coffee. It only took a few minutes while it brewed. I did a much-needed morning pee. I tried to be discreet. I'd embarrassed Mara enough already. Where do you live? Westchester, Pennsylvania. I'll make you a deal if I tell you who your daughter's real father is. You have to promise me you'll pursue him relentlessly until you get what you want. What are you talking about? Your daughter's father is a prominent politician in Pennsylvania. He will, of course, deny everything and will probably provide you with legal documents to stop your efforts. If you agree to push hard enough to get him to admit that the child is his, you can shame him into getting a bone marrow transplant. That's what you want, right? Yeah, sure. But how do we do that? I don't know. I'm a mechanic. I work metal for a living. I think the best way would be to use television, radio, and newspapers. Politicians will do anything to avoid bad press. Do you have any friends who might be able to help? Well, now they were both smiling. I must have said something that gave them hope. I think we can do this. Who the hell is he, Malcolm Eugene Foote? He's running for U.S. Senate. I bet he'll do anything to avoid bad publicity. Coffee was ready, but David and Mara couldn't wait to get home before they left. I told them how to contact Gloria and Josh in case they needed them. I was sure they would help. I also had them tell me where Sarah was. I would most likely be in Pensacola before they even got back to Westchester. I got a haircut and bought a new shirt. Sarah was a cheater who had ruined my life, but I still wanted to look good when I saw her. It was another trailer, but this time it was a nice new double. There stood her Volvo with a flat tire and a broken windshield. The woman who opened the door wasn't Sarah. She looked like she'd been doused hard and left soaking wet. She was at least 45, maybe 50, and must have had a hard life. The lack of makeup didn't help, and she just looked awful. I didn't get a chance to open my mouth, damned if it wasn't John Terrell. I never expected to see you here. I had to use the old line, "You're putting me at a disadvantage." Sherry Hart, come on in. Honey, can I get you a beer? No, but thank you. I'm here to see Sarah. Sherry walked across the room and stopped at the buffet in the dining room. Here she is. John, look all you want. Her hand pointed to a brass ear that stood in the middle of the empty buffet. I guess I was too late. I didn't move, just stood there staring at the container in front of me. Can I have a beer now? Sarah moved to Pensacola after giving up her baby for adoption. She bought the trailer with the money she got from Bixler Enterprises. After she was laid off, she had a profit share, 401k, and vacation and sick leave. She eventually took a job at a local garment factory where she worked in the shipping department. That's where she met Sherry. Sherry rented a room from Sarah. Every dime Sarah earned went to booze. She started with wine and gradually switched to stronger drinks, the cheapest ones. Eventually, she lost her job because of her drinking and was forced to use her savings. She never dated anyone or went out anywhere. Sherry stayed with her, paid her utilities, and bought food that Sarah wouldn't eat. It took her over 3 years to kill herself. Amazingly, she had a will and left me a double trailer in a Volvo. Sherry explained that Sarah was so upset about what she had done that she just gave up. She didn't try to prevent the pregnancy or even terminate it. The adoption had been arranged months before the baby was born. She never went back to work except for the black jobs she did poorly. Sherry said that Sarah didn't seem to have any ambition or purpose in life. Sarah talked about me a lot but was afraid to try to contact me. Gloria gave her my number, but she never called me. It was as if her one-night affair had hurt her more than it had hurt me. I was there for 2 weeks, and then I sold Sherry's trailer for $1 and got a 000 for the Volvo. 2 days later, I was in Westchester visiting my new friends, David and Marcia. Malcolm Eugene Foote resisted at first, but David and Marcia turned the screws. Until he gave in, he insisted on DNA tests, which proved he was the father to save face. He was more or less forced into a bone marrow transplant, which was successful. Malcolm's political career and family life did not make a favorable impression either. His decline in the polls was so rapid that the party replaced him with another candidate. A few months before the election, his wife filed for divorce and was very public about it. Sarah and I are now traveling to Dallas to see Gloria and my grandchild. I don't know how long I will keep Sarah with me. Probably until I have someone. Martha and I like to linger in bed for a few minutes each morning after the alarm clock rings. After all these years, we knew what was best for us. Those warm, lazy extra minutes in bed must be paid for with a desperate struggle to get ready for work a few years ago. The payback also included a mad dash to get the kids ready for school. Now that our 2 kids are gone, we find ourselves lingering in bed more and more often before the mad morning rush. The one that precedes the drive to work to make matters worse. I had to leave the house a good 20 minutes earlier than usual. Martha had to work late tonight. So instead of taking my car, we work not far from each other, so we commute to work together. I decided to ride my mountain bike to work. The weather forecast was also predicting a gorgeous spring day. I took the last bite of my toast, washed it down with coffee, and was ready to go. "I'm on my way, honey." I called out toward the bathroom where Martha was still busy. I waited for her to poke her head out the door and speak to me, but I didn't hear a response. "I'll see you tonight. I love you," I added. After a few seconds, I was running late. I didn't have time to ponder the lack of response from Martha. I threw my keys in my backpack and walked out. I'm Frank McKay, 53-year-old office manager for the State Department of Public Works. My wife, Martha, 49, works as an administrative assistant in the main office of a manufacturing company. We both look better than average. But Martha is dazzling, if I may say so. She doesn't look her age. Many men look in her direction. When we go out 10 minutes later, I heard a whistle announcing that I had received a text message. A few seconds later, my cell phone rang. It's hard enough to keep track of all the cars while biking, and I didn't talk on the phone. While on the road, I answered my phone at work. I got to work on time, but was so busy getting properly dressed for an 8:45 meeting that I left my cell phone in my backpack, forgetting about all the phone calls. Later, I followed a group of coworkers for lunch. Finally, during my afternoon coffee break, I remembered the phone calls. I had 5 messages from Martha, 2 text messages, and 3 voice messages. The first text message was sent at 8:10 and read, "You have the wrong keys. Call me." The second text message was sent at 8:35. "I'm waiting for your call." I then listened to the voicemail. The first message was left at 8:11. "Hi, honey. You took the wrong set of keys when you left. Could you drop them off at my work this morning? I'm going to need them. Call me." Her voice was a little harsh, and I didn't understand why she doesn't need the keys at work. They use a state-of-the-art security system with a key card. The second voicemail was left around 10:15. "What are you doing, Dave? I've been waiting for the keys all morning. Call me. I have better things to do than wait for you. I've known Martha for over 25 years, 23 years as a wife." It was obvious to me that she was royally pissed off. Anger and contempt oozed from every word before listening to her last voicemail message. I pulled my keys out of my backpack and placed them on the table. I listened to the last message left at 12:55. "Where are you? I'm still waiting for my keys. I don't know what you were thinking this morning, but they better be on my desk this afternoon this time." Martha didn't hold back her anger. She was almost shouting. I was stunned lately. I had begun to get used to Martha getting angry at me over nothing as she approached 50. I thought that perhaps she was going through changes in her body that were causing her to act strangely. This was the explanation she gave me when I pointed out her change in behavior. She rebuked me when I asked her to see a doctor for hormone treatment or whatever it is they do with menopause. Life with Martha had gotten very difficult lately. Our relationship was strained, but it was strange to see such an outburst over a bunch of keys she didn't need. I've been working on myself. I think 2 can play the anger game. I decided not to call her and just wait until 5 o'clock to take the damn keys shortly after 5. I made it to Martha's workplace. Surprise, surprise, I was just in time to see her pull out of the parking lot and head home. Despite the heavy traffic and the abilities of my bike, I still couldn't catch up with her. There was no use in doing so anyway. As we were both heading home, I knew she would soon pull out of the heavy traffic and pick up a speed I couldn't match. So I decided to take my usual, more direct route to try and overtake her home. A few minutes later, I was caught off guard when I saw her car heading to another part of town. It was an easier route for me. I could cut through the park, but definitely not the best route for Martha. She turned onto a street lined with many 2-story duplexes and parked at the curb. I had my suspicions, so I slowed down, watching her from afar as she climbed the stairs and rang the doorbell, typing on her phone. Even from where I was standing in front of my bike, I heard her text ring out. She read the message, walked back to her car, and drove off. What the hell happened? I asked myself. Martha, who was supposed to be working late, had arrived at an unknown apartment. I grabbed the bunch of keys I was holding to get a closer look. I recognized her car keys and our house keys. However, there was another key that I didn't recognize. I had a feeling it was the key that Martha was sorely missing. I walked over to the duplex, climbed the stairs, inserted the key into the front door lock, and turned it. The click of the lock signaled the end of my marriage to Martha. I didn't open the door. I needed to think, what was I going to do? My growing anger made it tempting to enter my wife's lover's apartment, destroying his belongings, or I could wait for him and beat the crap out of him, or I could just go to the police station and go straight to jail. No, blind anger wasn't the right answer, but I had to do something. I looked into the apartment. Technically, I was committing trespassing, but if I hurried, I wouldn't get caught. The first thing I saw was neatly folded mail on a small table in the hallway. I grabbed the phone bill. The letter was addressed to Steve Muller. I had no idea who it was, but the phone bill could come in handy. I put it in my backpack. There was enough information for the moment. I didn't want to get caught spying in someone else's apartment, so I got the hell out of there instead of heading home. I drove to a nearby hardware store within minutes. I had a duplicate key. I expected Martha to be home, but her car wasn't in the driveway. I didn't know what her lover had texted her, but it had to be a message to meet him somewhere else. I decided to play with Martha for a while. I called her, but she didn't answer. I didn't leave a text message, but I sent her a voicemail. I'm running late too, but I'll bring my keys soon. I'll be in your office soon. It took a few seconds to get a response. That won't be necessary. I've made other arrangements. I just left my office. Just go home. Followed her immediate reply. In her head, she probably added, and leave me alone, dumbass. I had a shitty evening. Martha didn't get home until 10 o'clock. That gave me a good 4 hours to decide what to do first. I wanted proof of her cheating with the copy I now had on my keychain. It would be easy to just do what I needed to do. The phone bill was pointing to her lover all by itself. They were constantly on the phone and texting each other, even in the evenings when Martha and I were together all this time. I thought she was texting our children. Did I really need to know why she had decided to leave me? No. It didn't matter now. Our love had faded in the last 6 months. It can only take so much indifference, recriminations, and nagging before a man's love begins to fade. I now realized that my loving wife was distancing herself from our marriage, but I never knew it. Today's discovery was the final blow to a very shitty marriage. We're done. There is no benefit to proving adultery in our state. Irreconcilable differences would be a motive, and the judge would split our assets 50-50. But as a cheating husband, I felt I had a lot to gain back some of my pride. I will not allow Martha to lie while married. The reason would be publicized to our children, parents, and friends. Knowing how Martha has changed over the past few months, I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to make me out to be the bad guy. In some way, I did play with many revenge scenarios, but decided not to go down that path. I only had a few years before early retirement, and I didn't want to ruin that. Retirement wouldn't be what I had envisioned all those years ago when I was living with Martha, but it was better than going to jail and losing my job now. At least I would enjoy my retirement the way I wanted to, not the way Martha wanted me to. I decided to face Martha's irrit when she returned from her date, so that would work in my favor. Her anger might lead to a small argument and excuse my icy behavior over the next few days. However, sex with Steve must have calmed her down a bit now that I was very attentive. I realized that she had averted my eyes a little when Martha finally got home. She was surprised to see me still sitting in the living room. She threw the spare car key into the container we keep by the door and grabbed her own bunch of keys that I had put there earlier. Taking one look at the keys, she tossed them into her purse. I expected some sort of grunt, but she didn't utter a single word. She headed straight for the bathroom. "I'm tired," she said to someone in the hallway. "I'm going to take a shower and go straight to bed." What I asked. "No love tonight." Her only response was to close the bathroom door behind her and lock it. Do you know many married people who lock the bathroom door? I hadn't noticed it before, but it happened a lot when Martha came home from working late. My God, I was so stupid. No wonder she was leaving me before going to bed. I watched the evening show. I hoped Martha was sound asleep. I swear she was still awake. Sleep was eluding her as well. The next morning, under the pretense of a meeting I left early in my car instead of work, I went to an electronics store and bought some interesting things. It only took me a couple of hours to get Muller's apartment wired for sound and picture. Being in the apartment for so long, I had time to look around. It was very well furnished. Many of the items looked like antiques. I don't know if he had a maid, but his apartment was spotless. Not a speck of dust to be seen anywhere. I wonder if he was a stickler for cleanliness. It was food for thought. I hoped my little spy gear would go unnoticed for a few days at least, long enough to get some racy shots of my wife and her lover. I shouldn't have worried about that back at the office after lunch. I received another text from Martha asking me not to wait up for her, as she had another late meeting. I made an appointment with the lawyer for the next day. That evening I drove by Muller's. Process of moving and parked further down the street from the video I watched, I recognized Steve Muller helping her. I had the urge to beat him up, but the extra 40 pounds he had against me made that more desirable than possible. I left later that night. I felt the real impact of Martha's betrayal. For the first time, my anger vanished, replaced by a loneliness like I had never experienced. The divorce would have been more traumatic if our children still lived with us. What was a blessing was also a curse, as I had no one to turn to for comfort. My parents were deceased. My brother and sister lived on the other side of the country. I decided to reach out to my 2 daughters. I was surprised to learn that Martha had not yet contacted them. She called and texted them all the time in college. I guess it was easier for her to lie to me than to her children a few weeks ago. If someone had asked me the proper behavior toward a cheating spouse, I would have advocated discretion, keeping the peace, and respecting 23 years of devotion as a mother and wife, now suffering desperate for love or at least sympathy. I told my 2 daughters, Mandy and Tess, all about it. I felt good knowing that neither of them doubted me when I told them that their mother had cheated on me, left me for another man. For a moment, I thought they might have known about their mother, but they were very upset by the news, and I dismissed the thought. My barely restrained sobs also helped to convince them their understanding was a great comfort to me. I made a big mistake that day. By the time I finished calling the kids, I had already had 1 full bottle of wine. I'm not a big drinker. Drinker Martha and I might have 1 or 2 bottles of wine a week, or sometimes 6 beers. The mistake wasn't the drinking, it was alcohol-induced self-pity faced with failure. A man must take responsibility for that failure, but try as I might, I couldn't understand what I had done to push Martha away. My job had never been an obstacle to my family life. I didn't have to travel maybe once every 5 years, for retraining my overtime was limited to a few fixed periods a year. To be honest, I've probably let myself go a bit in the last few years since I turned 50, but I was by no means fat or out of shape. Muller didn't seem much younger or in better shape than I was. I wondered if he was a better lover, an area in which my knowledge was rather meager. I hadn't had much experience before I met Martha, just 4 girlfriends between the ages of 18 and 28, and Martha and I had a lot to learn together after we met. I don't think Martha left me for social status either. His apartment didn't seem outlandish, his pieces of furniture showed more than anything else. But he wasn't a father. We were probably in the same income bracket as I curled up in the fetal position for the night. It occurred to me that there was no good reason why she left, only that I was who I was. Can you struggle with being yourself? Can I stop existing so that everything can be okay? My call the next morning came around 10 o'clock. I picked up the phone without looking at the caller ID. You son of a... Martha yelled, "You shouldn't have been so rude to Mandy and Tess." For a second, I wanted to just hang up, but part of me wanted the confrontation to put this whole nightmare behind me. What's rude, sweetie? I asked the way you cheat on me for months, or the way you move in with your lover, or is it all of the above? There was only silence. I hate silence. Martha, some part of me still piece of... I lied, unable to hold back a wave of indignation. Oh, and forget about talking to her. Just tell my daughter not to call me, forget I exist, and leave my grandchildren, my son-in-law, and me alone. By less than a minute later, feeling a little remorseful, I dialed Martha's cell phone number. She answered almost immediately, but didn't say anything. She was still hiccuping with tears. "Hello, Martha." I broke the silence. "Did you have a good day, Frank?" Why, she asked. "Why did you tell my father it would destroy him? Heck, been in such poor health lately. You knew that." "Hey, don't shift the blame." I said as such. An insult was hard to utter. It wasn't your father who was on the phone with your lover. It was me. I love your father, and I know you would have killed him with your cheating. I want to emphasize something here. Are you listening to me? Yes, she said, I'm listening. Don't ever let this guy come between me and my girls, or your father will know everything about you, all the raw details, as you rightly put it. I told her, don't think I'm kidding. I've trusted you for most of my adult life. I didn't know it was possible, but you broke that trust. I'm repeating myself, but I have to fight myself not to just shoot you on sight. I have a lot of hate in my heart for you, and that's what defines me at this moment. Do you get it? Yes, she finally said between sobs. Mark, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, I never wanted this. Neither did I said. And hung up 6 months later, I received the official papers that defined the official end of my marriage. I had recovered from my bout of depression, but there was still something missing in my life. I couldn't figure out what it was. I dated a few women, but I didn't get very far. I guess they recognized that I had a lot of baggage. I had a one-night stand with a work acquaintance, divorced. Like me, sex seemed empty without love and affection. We were just two adults desperate for relief. But it left me with a sense of loneliness worse than before. Coming home from work one evening, an epiphany finally came over me after moving into my new apartment. We'd sold the house to split the proceeds. I said hello to a new friend who had shown up 2 weeks ago. Hi, Jack, I said, peeking out the door. I was going back to the days when I was a bachelor, giving names to the dusty clumps gathering everywhere in my house, mostly behind doors and under the bed. Jack stood by the front door while Roger and Bugs lived under the bed. I was almost ready to pick up the vacuum cleaner in the closet, embarrassed by the thought that Muller would never leave his apartment in such a state as I curled up in the fetal position for the night. It occurred to me that there was no good reason why she left, only that I was who I was. Can you struggle with being yourself? Can I stop existing so that everything can be okay? My call the next morning came around 10 o'clock. I picked up the phone without looking at the caller ID. You son of a, Martha yelled. You shouldn't have been so rude to Mandy and Tess. For a second, I wanted to just hang up, but part of me wanted the confrontation to put this whole nightmare behind me. What's rude, sweetie? I asked. The way you cheat on me for months, or the way you move in with your lover, or is it all of the above? There was only silence. I hate silence, Martha. Some part of me still loves you. I said I won't say whether it is my female part or my male part. Perhaps my stupid part, but there's one thing I'll never do: lie to our family. You wouldn't dare. She pleaded. Not. Daddy, please watch me, I said, and hung up. My finger hovered over the speed dial button for Martha's father, but I didn't press it. Harvey had been miserable since his wife died of breast cancer 2 years ago. He was a very good man, but in his 80s, his health was a bit fragile. I think his will to live was a little weak. I could certainly understand that today, and he was a good man. I might as well have let him die peacefully instead of ruining his life because of his daughter's behavior. My anger was reading. I decided to inform Martha of my decision. I picked up Muller's cell phone bill and dialed the number listed on it. A male voice answered. I hesitated for a second. Martha McKay, please, I asked. There was silence for a moment. I could hear someone crying in the background. Obviously, Martha, who's asking Muller, asked her father, You piece of... I lied, unable to hold back a wave of indignation. Oh, and forget about talking to her. Just tell my daughter not to call me. Forget I exist and leave my grandchildren, my son-in-law, and me alone. By less than a minute later, feeling a little remorseful, I dialed Martha's cell phone number. She answered almost immediately, but didn't say anything. She was still hiccuping with tears. Hello, Martha. I broke this. A good day, Frank. Why, she asked. Why did you tell my father it would destroy him? Heck, been in such poor health lately? You knew that. Hey, don't shift the blame, I said, as such an insult was hard to utter. It wasn't your father who was on the phone with your lover. It was me. I love your father, and I know you would have killed him with your cheating. I want to emphasize something here. Are you listening to me? Yes, she said. I'm listening. Don't ever let this guy between me and my girls, or your father will know everything about you, all the raw details, as you rightly put it. I told her, don't think I'm kidding. I've trusted you for most of my adult life. I didn't know it was possible, but you broke that trust. I'm repeating myself, but I have to fight myself not to just shoot you on sight. I have a lot of hate in my heart for you, and that's what defines me at this moment. Do you get it? Yes, she finally said between sobs. Mark, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. Neither did I said, and hung up. 6 months later, I received the official papers that defined the official end of my marriage. I had recovered from my bout of depression, but there was still something missing in my life. I couldn't figure out what it was. I dated a few women, but I didn't get very far. I guess they recognized that I had a lot of baggage. I had a one-night stand with a work acquaintance, divorced like me. Sex seemed empty without love and affection. We were just two adults desperate for relief. But it left me with a sense of loneliness worse than before coming home from work one evening. An epiphany finally came over me after moving into my new apartment. We'd sold the house to split the proceeds. I said hello to a new friend who had shown up 2 weeks ago. "Hi, Jack," I said, peeking out the door. I was going back to the days when I was a bachelor, giving names to the dusty clumps gathering everywhere in my house, mostly behind doors and under the bed. Jack stood by the front door while Roger and Bugs lived under the bed. I was almost ready to pick up the vacuum cleaner in the closet, embarrassed by the thought that Muller would never leave his apartment in such a state. The next day, I ripped the corner of the condom wrapper off and left it on the floor by the bed. I pulled the blanket up, jumped around a little in the middle of the bed to disturb the sheets, and put the blanket back down almost exactly as it was. I also left the prints of 2 glasses on the coffee table, some ashes in the toilet, and a working ceiling fan. I picked up another porcelain trinket, broke it, and threw it in the trash. I grabbed a rare bottle of wine off the shelf, picked the one with more dust on it, opened it, poured it down the drain, and left the empty one in the trash. That was my grand finale. That evening, my phone rang. It was my youngest Tess. Daddy, you have to do something. She yelled, anything for you. Honey, I said, help mommy, she said, barely holding back her sobs. She's at the police station. This guy hit her, and she called the police. She has nowhere to go. She doesn't want to go back there anymore. He's gotten pretty violent lately, and she said, hang in there, honey. I interrupted her. I'm not the man to help your mother. I hate her to the core, and I have to admit that I really like what's happening to her. Not the beating, but the complete fiasco with her boy toy. What's going on around Daddy, pleaded Tess. She's my mom, and she needs help. Okay, it's only because you're asking. I said, don't expect me to do anything more than just pick her up and drive her. Thanks, Dad. A few minutes later, I was at the police station. She was still being questioned, so I had to wait a little while, but I sent her a note saying I was waiting for her. I have to admit, an hour later, I felt terrible when I saw Martha with a black eye on her left eye. She cried when she saw me walking toward me with open arms. I fought myself, but managed to reach out my arms to keep her at arm's length. Hey, I'm here because my daughter asked me to come. I said, don't ever think we're going to be friends. I'll give you a ride wherever you want to go. That's all. I walked out of the police station without looking back to see if she was following me. Her sobs were the only sign that she was near once in the car. I asked, where do you want to go home? She replied. Without saying a word, I drove to my destination. Martha reacted only when I turned onto Muller Street and parked in front of the house. I don't want to go there, she said, holding back tears. Look, Muller's in jail right now. That leaves you plenty of time to gather your things and leave. She stared at me for a few seconds, then got out of the car and headed for the apartment. Soon she started taking out trash bags with her clothes in them. She didn't take much when she left me, so she finished quickly once she was done. We left. After a few minutes, she asked where we were going. I could hear the fear in her voice. We going to your father's house. I told her, you said you wanted to go home. You don't have another home? We drove in silence for a few more minutes. Her father lives far away in the suburbs. I didn't get a chance to apologize to you, Martha said, breaking the silence. I'm sorry for what I did. I was stupid and you caught me cheating. I accept that, but I never stopped loving you. I just forgot what that meant for a while. I didn't even want to live with Steve. We didn't have much in common. I want to tell you that I'm sorry for hurting you. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Could I have said, it's okay, absolutely not? Could I tell her I forgive her? That would be a lie, since I still resented the way she had ruined our marriage. I was silent. I think my silence hurt her more than any pompous speech I could have made to let her know how much she had hurt me. I still couldn't understand how you could swear your love to a man and then hurt him so seriously near her father's house. Martha looked at me. What am I going to tell my father? She asked. It rendered me speechless. We'd been divorced for months and she hadn't told her father. You gotta be kidding me. I said, Harvey doesn't know we're divorced. Well, I just told him we were in trouble. Martha said, definite in trouble? Now, I replied, find a good reason, but don't make me the bad guy or I'll hear about it and tell him the truth. It was late, but I didn't offer to help Martha move her things into her father's house. First of all, I was enjoying her misery a little. Second, I didn't want to talk to Harvey the next day. I parked across the street from Muller's house. He got home just before noon. It was time to put the final nail in the coffin of their flirtation. I grabbed the cheapest bottle of Chilean wine I'd bought along the away $1.10 investment and headed up the stairs. Miller opened the door, and was surprised to recognize me. "Hi," I said, "we've never met, but I'm Frank McKay, Martha Sharp's ex-husband. I offered him a bottle of wine and he took it here. Take it so, you know, I'm not a freeloader. This will replace the other bottle of wine I emptied." I said then. I stuck my hand in my pocket and pulled out a key. The key to his apartment. I gave it to him. "Oh, and I won't be needing this either. Martha moved out last night. I smiled all the way to my car. I was in high spirits knowing that Mueller would be more sorry for the loss of his $900 bottle of Chateau Montelena than for the loss of Martha. I had a springy step. Revenge can be so sweet. I guess I can move on now after burning that apartment and saw Martha's car. Despite everything I had been through in the last 24 hours, I could still feel my hearth sinking at yet another proof of her betrayal. Tomorrow would be a crucial day. I drove back to the house. I was tempted to just check into the town motel, but it would be ridiculous to go to that expense when it wasn't my fault. Back at the house, I considered sleeping in the guest bedroom, but again I decided that I wasn't the one who'd ruined our marriage. Let Martha sleep there. I moved all of her things into the guest bedroom. In a mess, I just grabbed entire drawers, piled them on the bed, and then pulled clothes off her side of the closet and threw them in there as well. Generally a very soothing activity. I felt better with each armful I carried to her room when she got home that evening. She looked worse than she had the night before. She had that just look she might have after a 5-hour. Again, she was surprised to see me. She didn't bother to explain her lateness or her appearance, as if she could explain the reason I couldn't believe I could cause such pain, knowing we had a divorce looming over us. I grabbed her hand and dragged her toward the bedrooms. "What are you doing, Frank? You're hurting me," she whimpered. I forced myself to speak more confidently than I felt. I knew I was minutes away from losing her. I had to act fast. I had to keep my cool. "Shut up," I said loudly. It was so out of character for me saying things like that, as if I'd hit her suddenly. The accusing looks I'd been getting for the past few months were replaced with fear. But what kind of fear? Fear of violence or fear of exposure? I couldn't know that, and I wasn't going to ask. I opened the guest bedroom so she could see her things stacked there starting tonight. I said sharply, "This is your room," and I pushed her inside. "We're not husband and wife anymore. Stay away from me." I warned her, in fact, it would be better if you just packed up and left right now. Martha was annoyed and angry. She resisted trying to leave the room. "Oh no, you bastard, if any of us are sleeping in the guest room." "It's you," she said. "I broke my back taking care of the kids. You in the house, show some respect or leave the house." Did I want to argue with her? No. I forcefully pushed her back into the guest room, surprising us both with the force of my action. "I'm giving you two choices." I growled at her. "Either you sleep here until our divorce is final, or you go live with Steve Miller right now." His name struck her like a karate kick. Despite her behavior in recent months, Martha still knew me better than anyone. She realized I knew about her cheating, and she knew I had no forgiveness. She knew I would never accept her back into my life, and we would never part as friends. Who wants to be friends with someone who stabbed you in the back? I could see in her eyes that she didn't envision getting caught, and she wasn't ready for a confrontation. After a few seconds, I saw defeat written all over her face. She staggered into the bedroom, threw off her clothes, and sat on the bed. Tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. She said something I couldn't hear what I shouted. "I'm sorry," she said a little louder. "I was so stupid. Please don't hate me. You know me, Martha. I said I won't hate you after a while, but I'm sure I won't love you either. Hell, I don't know if I can just be around you." I started to close the door, but I wanted to hurt her some more. "I'd rather make this quick," I said firmly. "I'd appreciate it if you left as soon as possible. Just sign the divorce papers you'll be getting soon, and we'll never have to see each other again." I closed the door, speaking to Martha one last time before the court hearing. The last sound I heard was her sobbing the next day. I picked up my spy gear from Muller's apartment. My next stop was my attorney. Since my demands were simp, he assured me that the divorce papers could be delivered within 2 days. I paid him in advance and left. I tried to go back to work, but it was more than futile. I finally explained my predicament to my supervisor, who told me to take a few days off. I drove home. But when I arrived, I saw Martha in the